Hello fans of Marvel heroes and friends of my channel, welcome to this very special mini-series on Rogue. As I said before, Rogue is like a mini-game within Marvel heroes, the game itself. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Rogue one series after another as I discover more builds that are fun to play, fun to kind of like effective as well, and I'll share that with you. And in this very first episode, I'm going to talk about how to build your Rogue, just to show you the way and explain to you some fundamental on Rogue, because there has been a lot of questions on how do I steal power, what power should I use, how should I consider how to build, and so on and so forth. So I'd like to just dedicate one single video for the beginners. As for the veterans, don't worry, I'll have more video later on the build, and do check out the link at the description of the video. I'll organize all my build in my website under the Rogue session. Okay, now if you are playing Rogue, one of the very special thing about Rogue you should kind of be aware is that you could steal power from the villain, from the team up, as well as from the heroes themselves. Yeah. And all this become very rich because you can basically build any type of hero that you want Rogue to be. Having said that, Rogue also have her own power as well. And in fact, I'm a big fan of her own power. So for the beginners, I would like to encourage you to start with Rogue's power first and start to supplement with her stolen power. And then after that, you can build any variety you like. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through some tips on what to look out for, how to build your Rogue to be strong, effective, and durable as well, just to start the journey, and what do you expect along the way, how you're going to improve and so on, what decision you have to make now versus what decision you can make later. So that is what you can get from this video. All right. So now, if you take a look at Rogue, here she has a lot of power here. And she has a lot of power over that side as well. So, this is all her own power. It's marvelous physics. And this is the one that you can steal power. Now, how does steal power work? It basically have one power called Drain Life. Drain Life is a very nice damage per second, kind of like, energy damage per second for 8-second duration. And you can put it into a hotbar like this one here. And then you can target one of the team up here and press this guy here. Right? Just walk up to a person. And then after that, you click this guy here and you steal power. Now, if you have already stolen the power, they will say that you have already stolen the power. Otherwise, they will say that you have a new power. So now, where does the power goes? That depends on whether a power is a passive power or active power. Active power will go under this side here. Passive power go under here. The passive power is called trait. So for example, you could change to any of these things called trait, like precise aim. This one stolen from Hawkeye. Give you the base damage for range, for melee, buff quite a lot of things on range, but then debuff on melee. So if you are range build, you probably pick this one. It's a good option, for example. And then there are, basically there are all sorts of different kind of trait that you could use. Some of them, it will change the way that you play the hero. So my suggestion is this. It could be quite overwhelming, but my suggestion is, this is not part of Exile, some game whereby you have to make a decision at level 1. You do not have to decide on your build at the very beginning of your journey as you level through this game. You can develop the build as time goes by. There's no penalty on that. You can change your build anyhow you like. But there are some decisions that you have to make at the beginning. I'll show you a little bit later. So I talk a little bit about on the passive side. You can have 3 traits you call that you can use. You can pick any of these traits. Some of these could buff like basic power and core power, for example. Some of them could be buffing movement speed plus 25% whenever you use the teleport power and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of things to read through, but don't worry, this is something that you should build up as you play this game, as you face different heroes, face different villain, team up, just steal their power. Take a look at that. But you don't have to stress yourself a lot on that. Like I said before, I would prefer to start the journey with her own power. I'll talk a little bit about her power in just a bit. As for the active power side, it's very rich in the sense that there are plenty of things that you can go. This is the bank. Things that are unlocked are the one that you can see this the kind of like the icon open up. Things that you are using right now is the one that, for example, has a lock there. It means that you have already put it onto your hotbar, or it can mean that it hasn't been unlocked yet, like some of this power that I have yet to unlock from the bosses. Okay, now active power has many types. So I'm going to walk you through some of the types of power that you should be aware and what to do with them. I think that will be important. So some of the power have something called the so like this one, movement, core, stealth. Movement and stealth is something that is very commonly found in any hero that you have. Core is something that is very special to Rook. Now what core means is that usually this power is the one that you could spam around, but because this is a movement power, there's a movement kind of dash charges to it. But let's take another example. This is a core. So like for example, this bio spray, you can just keep spamming. Usually things like single spander are the one that is core power. You can just keep using it. There's no limit to how many times you spend. Sometimes some of them may have a resource cost to it. Some of them may not. Then you can something called enhancement. Enhancement is like a buff for a certain duration. So you could buff the hero for larger kind of like damage kind of thing, and so on and so forth. And do read the kind of like orange kind of text to the thing like 0.75% to impact power. Now impact power is something that maybe I'll bring you an impact. Like for example, the Wrath of Muspelheim is the impact power, right? So you have the impact to it with attack to it. So some of the buff only buff certain power, and you have this one also called impact. Now then you have another thing called the I want to show you something called attrition. This is a good example. It's called attrition. Now, what's the difference between impact and attrition? Go back to the fundamental design of this game. Impact, of course, there are exceptions to it, but fundamentally, it means cooldown power. So you press a button, you deal a damage, and then after that, you wait for maybe 4 seconds, 6 seconds, 8 seconds, or what have you, until the power is available for you again, and you can do it again. So that is impact. Attrition is damage over time. Normally, there are exceptions to it as well, but what it really means is that you apply a damage over time to the enemies, and then it becomes a twice per second ticking to sort of burn the enemy down, and that is called attrition. So, shall you pick attrition or shall you pick impact? Depends on play style. Attrition usually is something that you can keep spamming. You can just spam across. Attrition is very efficient in terms of the resource wise. If you look at damage per resource, attrition power usually has better return to it. But the attrition power also has its own disadvantage, is that you have to be aware when to reapply. If you reapply too early, you clip the damage over time window, and then you waste a bit of resource because you don't need to refresh so early. Or if you refresh too late, then you can't miss the window there. There's a gap between your first attrition to a second attrition, and you're not keeping your DPS uptime. So usually you have some attrition and some impact power to sort of like help you measure when you're going to reapply your attrition power. So again, depending on your play style, you may want to pick some power whereby it help you time when to reapply attrition, things like that. And of course, there's something called the summon as well. Summon is if you want to build a rook as a summoner or partial summoner, you can do that too. So there are various type of thing there. So there are enhancement, there are impact, attrition, summon, and there may be others in the future to come, right? Because this game is still growing. This game is still a lot of many power that can still in the future. I do not know what is going to happen in that sense. And some of this power, like for example, Lavalanche, impact, but then there's also a energy damage twice per second as well. So it is like a hybrid impact plus the attrition itself, or you have something called this is like just purely like a impact to it, right? So there are things that you should pay attention to when you pick up when you build your rook, on what power it is to use. My suggestion really is that if you start the journey, start with something that of her the power tree first. You could experiment as you steal other power just to mix it up. It may be fun to you to do it. So as for her power, she has a basic power, the Drain Punch, that you don't need to worry about spirit a lot. You can just use it to spam, especially during the leveling experience. And she has something called the Crushing Blow as well, because that is like her main spammer. Actually, this one hits really, really hard compared to some of this power that I'm looking at as well, as the alternative options. But in order to use this power to make it work, you must have drain life in your whole toolkit. So for example, if you have drain life, then you have the crushing blow, then you can do a lot of you can use this to buff this one. And I found that unless I've already stolen all the powers in the bank, as your journey goes, you should have a drain life somewhere in your toolbar anyway, so may as well use it. So that is my advice. But there are a lot of other power within this tree that's very awesome. Things even like extreme drain that you can do like a health regen as well as execute to it. So there's a lot of very, very good function that you could use. This one also get health regen as well, depending on how you spec it. So there's a lot of regeneration going on from a power point of view if you pick the right trait as well. So I'll talk a little bit about talent in just a bit, but I think all in all, she is a durability and fighting hero. That means that whatever you gear, you should be pay attention to the attribute durability and fighting. So with the fighting, you probably have to take the 5% brutal, so you can't pick the attribute in the infinity system. As for durability, I think you can just do a full durability to it, unless you have some very specific build around it. All right, and she is a deflect hero. I'll talk a little bit about how to make her strong in terms of the mitigation wise. But from the trait perspective, I think you should just experiment, and when you steal some power, just put it into your whole arsenal, and you can just experiment and play around with what you have. Like for example, I enjoy a lot of defensive kind of stats because I would like my hero to be strong and to be able to withstand some of the hardest content in the game. And so some of this, I'm not saying this is the best, by the way. I'm just saying that one of the options out there that you could use. So for me, I value things like health regeneration, base health increase, and stuff like that. I kind of like the kind of way. So that is very much like how you could start your rogue, like the day one journey. All right. So just to recap, start with whatever she has in her toolkit and just mix around with whatever power that you could still experiment on the passive and trait. Sooner or later, you'll find a balance point whereby, I'm just too defensive, I want more DPS or whatnot. All right. Now, when it comes to building rogue, there has been a lot of different builds to it. Why? Because different people play very differently. From my experience, for example, some like to go all out on DPS. They want the heroes to be the super powerful hero that kill the dummy very fast, right? Because you can go and test your build towards the dummy and see how fast it is to kill it. Some like that. It could require some rather timing and clicking a button and so on. Some probably like me who enjoy something very much in the balanced point of view, like I would like to be durable, I would like to have good DPS, but I want it to be fun, the power flow well. I don't need to manage this, manage that, and manage XYZ kind of thing. So it really depends on what you want to do. And some actually like to build her rogue to be super tanky, and although DPS drops quite a fair bit, but they feel great because whatever content throw upon them, they can just stand there and just tank everything. So it really, really depends on your playstyle. Some want to play the rogue as a summoner as well. So there's no right or wrong answer. But what you need to pay attention to is that some build require a very specific gearing option. So ask yourself one thing. The very first question that you need to ask yourself is, what kind of rogue do you envisage to be? Do you want to be a generalist, or do you want to be a specialist? For example, if you are very fixated and decided that your rogue has to be a summoner, then from day one, when you choose a legendary to use, then you use something like a trident, something that is buff the summon ally damage. Even for if you say that I foresee myself to play as a hybrid hero, then Power Cosmic may start the journey because it's almost like a free legendary, provided that you have the World Stone currencies, right? So things like this would probably help you decide on what legendaries should you start with. So like for me, I would like to be a generalist because I would like to be able to play any new build that come upon, that I may chance upon, and just enjoy myself without having to fix on one particular, like if I want range then I probably want to go for like a bow, for example, right? Grade 80 bow. If I want a pure physical, maybe I want to do an X. So there's a lot of options there. But for me as a generalist, I would start with a power cosmic as a level, and after that, when I reach level 60, I'll switch to a shield, like grade 80 shield. Now, shield is not going to give you a whole big DPS, but it helps you two things. Number one, it helps you get into any raid without question asked. Because if you go in as a power cosmic, a lot of people may think, well, it's 70, so it's not good. But actually, it's not bad. But if you're going to go in with grade 80 as a generalist, then I highly recommend a shield, because it's an all-purpose. It helps you, with all the defensive stat, and with that, you can actually do, quite aggressive in your gearing to be more DPS, going for more DPS. So legendary is probably the first thing that you should make a decision on. Which kind of rook would you like to be? If you're a generalist, pick something like grade 70. If you don't have Whirlstone, pick a Gunil, grade 70. Have Whirlstone, get a power cosmic. And if you are grade 80, pick a shield. Those are very, very generic. It helps you with like maybe 90% of the build out there. You can use it. As for the artifact point of view, I don't want to go too much on artifact. I'm still in the midst of re-gearing all my stuff after the biggest update ever. So all these artifacts, I'll change it. I mean, some of these are no longer as good as before. So I'm going to change quite a fair bit of that. But when you pick an artifact, and these are not the one to use, just want to tell you that these are not the one to use. But if you want to pick your artifact, pick something that's generic as well. Things like Gem of the Curse, for example, will give you a very generic kind of power buff to it, or you can pick something like the the dupe ectoplasm if you are into things like more of the hybrid kind of build. Rune word as well would you have to decide what kind of rune word to use. If you are going for hybrid, then you pick something like this. But however, if you want to go for like the summoner, there will be a different kind of like rune words. At the end of the day, you may need to switch gear around in order to get to the kind of thing that you want. For example, if you are like having the summoner, then you probably roll crit instead of crit damage rating. Just another example, because crit damage rating does not go into a pet. Just another example. All right. So I hope that gives you some idea of how you start and what your end game goal to be when it comes to picking the stats that are relevant to you. Just to recap. The stats are really important. Durability, right? So you just look at this one here, durability and fighting. Just go along that side, and I think you can't go too wrong to it. And if you could get something that's generic, can do physical, kind of like energy, mental, maybe melee, range, stuff like that, right? So it gives you a lot of options in the future. If you want to do a pure range, yes, you can as well. If you do a pure, like a mixed melee like me, you can as well. But be prepared to switch around with the blessing as well, because blessing will change as you decide on which way to go. All right. So I hope that gives you some idea on the kind of like gearing. From the gearing point of view, what you need to pay attention to. And the other side that I would like to talk about is the damage reduction. How do you derive certain things and so on? If you are playing a rook that is melee in nature, it doesn't have to be all melee. You can have some melee and some ranged to supplement your build. If you have melee, you hit with a melee power, you actually gain an 8% damage reduction. So what it really means is that for 3 seconds, so long as you are healing with a melee power, then you add that 3% onto whatever percentage you have here. All right. So now, do watch out for the damage reduction here, because as a melee hero, melee range, each kind of thing, you would need to have pretty high, I think at least like 50 and above, to survive in some of the harder content. So whatever passive that you pick here, make sure that you have a sufficient amount of like a damage reduction. Now, how does this being derived? That I'm going to walk through with you. It derived through 3 components here. Well, actually more than 3, but start with 3 first. You have the defense, deflect, and dodge. Now, how it works is that dodge will avoid all damage upon you, and there's a dodge chance to it. So, like for example, look at this one. I have a 6.8% chance to dodge. So for 100 hits that come upon me, 7 hits I can dodge and avoid all damage. Another 93 of them, 93 hit I cannot avoid all. So what happened after that? There's something called deflect. Deflect means that you would actually receive half the damage instead of full damage. So, going back to example, so 100 hit, 7 I can avoid. The other 93 hit I have to rely on 18.8 kind of % to mitigate, to deflect and so on. To deflect, meaning I take half the damage. Then whatever that I cannot mitigate through deflect and dodge, then I'll have to mitigate through the defense itself. Right, so that is something that you probably have to understand the whole thing, and the whole damage reduction that you could think of is actually a derivation of 3 components here. So it is your damage reduction from the defense itself, which is the last like a defense that you have, plus 40% of the 20% of the deflect and 40% of the dodge will give you the total defense reduction. Damage reduction. And whatever that you have those like a multiplier, like total defense rating or multiplier, total deflect multiplier, total dodge multiplier is the one that they will multiply this number by maybe 1%, 2%, 3%, whatnot. Another thing to bear in mind though is that all this number here has a diminishing return. So the more you put, the more you up this number, right, the lesser return it will have. So if you are looking at a hero whereby your defense is pretty high, and then after that your deflect and dodge is the lowest. For example, for me, my rogue, if you have an option to gear your hero, always pick the lowest rating to gear because you have the best value for money. It is the same principle as, say, Diablo 3, whereby for the strength and dexterity hero, you have to gear for the resistance, while if you are intelligence kind of hero, you gear for armor. So it's the same thing. You always go for the one that is missing to gear for those in order to make your damage reduction high. So that's how the whole game works. Now, of course, after you add all these numbers here, then you have to add all these like right now it's unique, but I think Omega gear will come. We have something similar. So anything with the this is a 0.9% reduction, and another 6% reduction, 6% reduction, 6% reduction. So all these will add up together, plus the whatever 8% that you have over the trait itself. Then if you have a team up, then the team up will eat some of the damage that you have as well, right? So team up will mitigate 5% of the damage as well. So all these things all add up together, and to recover health, you can have life on hit. You can have the health regen as well. There's a health regen, health on hit. So every time you hit, how much health that you get back, and the health regen is how much you passively regenerate per second point of view. Now, of course, you can have the mech kit, and the mech kit will be augmented by a core that you have. Some of the core may have the a value whereby it will give you it will give you some extra kind of like I don't have one here, but there are some that when you take a mech kit, you get extra 5,000 kind of like health and stuff like that. So that's how you regenerate and recover health. So I think in short, whatever you build that you are going after, just make sure that you have a very well-rounded hero that will be able to carry you through some of the harder content, and start with her own power first. Build upon it, mix and match other power to it. If you want to replace the main spender, you could as well. I think the only thing mandatory really in this build or in any rogue build is probably the drain life, because if you are still stealing car power, you need to have it, and also her signature as well. It's one of the signature that help you to, it's kind of a nice signature to use as well, I would say. All right, so I think let's not go too deep into the whole like like a build kind of what power to use, because I would like you to explore, and as and when you steal some power, read up the tooltip, swap it in and see whether it works better for you, and think through whether you want your rook to be a general rook, or you want it to be like more of a very specialist kind of rook. And so you could read around on what guides out there, but I think as you level, I strongly suggest you experiment along the way, because a lot of these guides that are outside, they are for end game, and at end games that require you to have a certain gear strategy in order to make the build work. Copying the power doesn't make the build work. That's from my experience. And also it depends on whether you like the kind of like play style or not, and everything else. So, well, enjoy the journey. And as always, if you have any question, you can drop me a line below. More than happy to help you out here. Do expect a lot more guides on Rook, because this will be like a mini series. And the next one I'm going to share with you is really at the end game how to use her own power, supplement with some of the power out there to make her a very strong hero for harder content to start with. And after that, I may experiment a lot more other power and I share with you my build thinking behind it as well. All right. So I'll see you next time. Goodbye.